The most evil person on the Paramount Studios lot wasn't a gangster or a corrupt executive or a predatory director. She was a mother. Patricia Kellerman stood 5 feet 2 inches tall, wore pastel cardigans that made her look like she belonged at a church bake sale, and spoke in the soft, concerned tones of someone who genuinely cared about children's welfare. But behind her gentle smile and protective maternal facade lurked something monstrous, a woman who was systematically destroying her own daughter's life in pursuit of fame and fortune. On the morning of September 14, 1970, Dean Martin watched Patricia slip 2 small white pills into 12-year-old Jenny Kellerman's orange juice, and he realized he was witnessing something that would haunt him for the rest of his life if he didn't act immediately. The child star system of Hollywood was built on a foundation of exploitation disguised as opportunity. Studios marketed these children as wholesome entertainment for American families while subjecting them to working conditions that would be illegal in any other industry. But the real criminals weren't the executives or the directors. They were the parents who sold their children's childhoods for a chance at vicarious stardom. Patricia Kellerman was the worst of them all, a stage mother whose ambition had metastasized into something that resembled love but was actually its opposite. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of Los Angeles day when the smog lifts just enough to remind you why people moved to California in the first place. Dean had arrived early at Paramount for costume fittings for The Ambushers, the latest installment in his Matt Helm spy series. He was walking past Stage 7 when he heard the sound that stopped him in his tracks. A child crying in the specific way that children cry, when they're not just sad but broken. Through the partially open soundstage door, Dean could see 12-year-old Jenny Kellerman sitting on a director's chair, her legs dangling like a regular kid's, except everything else about the scene screamed that this wasn't a regular kid having a regular day. Jenny was the star of Little Angel, a family sitcom that had made her one of the most recognizable faces in America. Her golden hair was styled in perfect curls, her dress was pressed and spotless, and her makeup was applied with the precision of a professional portrait. But her eyes were the eyes of someone much older, someone who had seen too much and lost too much. Patricia Kellerman stood beside her daughter like a sentinel, holding a glass of orange juice and speaking in the kind of voice that sounds soothing but carries an undercurrent of absolute control. "Now, sweetie, you need to drink this. The director wants you happy and energetic for the next scene, and Mama knows what's best for you." Dean had seen stage mothers before. Hollywood was full of them, women who lived through their children's successes and drove them like racehorses toward early burnout. But something about this scene felt different. Jenny wasn't just tired or cranky or having a normal child's moment of rebellion. She was displaying the kind of exhausted compliance that comes from months or years of having your will systematically broken. "I don't want to drink it, Mama," Jenny said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It makes me feel funny, like I'm not really here." Patricia's smile never wavered, but her grip on the glass tightened. "Nonsense, darling. It's just vitamins. Special vitamins to help you perform your best. You want to make Mama proud, don't you? You want to make all your fans happy?" Dean watched in growing horror as Patricia produced 2 small white pills from her purse and dropped them into the orange juice with the casual efficiency of someone who had performed this ritual countless times before. The pills dissolved quickly, leaving no trace except for a slight fizz that subsided within seconds. "Now drink up, my little star. We have 3 more scenes to shoot today, and Mama needs you to be perfect." Jenny took the glass with the resigned obedience of a child who had learned that resistance only made things worse. She drank the entire contents in 4 quick swallows, then handed the empty glass back to her mother. Within minutes, Dean could see the change. Jenny's posture relaxed. Her eyes became glassy and unfocused, and she began to move with the artificial energy of someone whose natural rhythms had been chemically altered. Dean Martin had seen enough drug use in his life to recognize what he was witnessing. This wasn't vitamins or energy supplements. This was chemical control, and it was being administered to a child by her own mother. The protective instinct that had driven him to stand up for Sammy Davis Jr. against racist hotel security, that had motivated him to refuse FBI pressure to betray his friends, now focused with laser intensity on a 12-year-old girl whose biggest crime was being talented enough to make adults rich. He waited until Patricia left the soundstage to make a phone call before approaching Jenny. The child was sitting quietly in her chair, staring at nothing with the blank expression of someone whose consciousness had been artificially modified. "Hey there, kiddo," Dean said gently, crouching down so that he was at eye level with her. "I'm Dean. I work here too." Jenny turned to look at him with delayed recognition. Her pupils were dilated, and her speech was slightly slurred when she responded. "You're Dean Martin. You sing songs. My mama says you're very famous." "I sing a few songs, yeah, but I'm not nearly as famous as you." "You're Jenny Kellerman, right? I've seen your show. You're pretty good." A ghost of a genuine smile crossed Jenny's face. "Thank you. I like acting. At least, I think I do. Sometimes it's hard to remember what I like." The innocent honesty of that statement hit Dean like a physical blow. Here was a child who was being systematically separated from her own desires, her own personality, her own sense of self. "Jenny, can I ask you something? Those vitamins your mother gives you, how long have you been taking them?" Jenny's brow furrowed as she tried to focus through the chemical haze. "A long time. Since the show started, I think. Mama says they help me be better. But sometimes I feel like I'm watching myself from far away, like I'm not really me." Dean felt a cold rage building in his chest. This wasn't just child abuse. This was the systematic destruction of a human being's fundamental sense of identity. Patricia Kellerman was turning her daughter into a puppet, chemically controlled and emotionally manipulated, all in service of maintaining a career that was making Patricia rich and famous by proxy. "Jenny, do you have anyone you can talk to? Besides your mother, I mean. Grandparents, aunts, uncles." "My daddy left when I got famous. Mama says he couldn't handle success. My grandparents live far away, and Mama says they don't understand the entertainment business." Jenny's voice carried the rehearsed quality of a child who had been coached to give specific answers to specific questions. Dean realized with growing horror that Patricia had systematically isolated Jenny from any potential support system that might question what was happening to her. The child was completely alone, trapped in a system designed to extract maximum profit from her talent while destroying her humanity in the process. When Patricia returned from her phone call, Dean was ready. He had made his own phone call to a contact at Los Angeles Child Protective Services who owed him a favor from a charity fundraiser the previous year. "Mrs. Kellerman," Dean said, approaching Patricia with his characteristic casual confidence, "I wonder if I could have a word with you privately." Patricia's smile was automatic but cautious. "Of course, Mr. Martin, though I should mention that Jenny and I are on a very tight schedule today. The network executives are visiting the set, and everything needs to be perfect." Dean gestured toward a quiet corner of the soundstage, away from the cast and crew. "This will just take a minute. It's about Jenny's welfare." The word welfare triggered an immediate defensive response in Patricia. Her smile became tighter, more forced. "Jenny's welfare is my primary concern, Mr. Martin. I've dedicated my entire life to supporting her career and ensuring her happiness." "I'm sure you have," Dean said quietly, "but I couldn't help noticing those vitamins you gave her. She seems pretty out of it for a kid who's supposed to be performing." Patricia's eyes hardened, but she maintained her sweet maternal facade. "Jenny is a very sensitive child, Mr. Martin. The pressures of stardom can be overwhelming for someone so young. Her doctor has prescribed certain supplements to help her cope with stress and maintain the energy levels required for her demanding schedule." "What doctor?" The question was asked so casually that Patricia almost answered before realizing she was being interrogated. "I'm sorry, but my daughter's medical information is private. I don't see how that's any of your business." Dean stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more menace than any shout could have conveyed. "Here's how it's my business, Patricia. I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've seen what happens to children when adults put profit ahead of protection, and I've made it my business to stop it whenever I can." Patricia tried to maintain her composure, but cracks were beginning to show in her perfect maternal mask. "Mr. Martin, I don't appreciate your implications. I am a loving, devoted mother who has sacrificed everything for my daughter's success. If you have concerns, I suggest you speak with the network executives or the studio heads who employ her." "I've already spoken with someone," Dean said, Child Protective Services should be here within the hour to conduct an investigation. I suggest you use that time to think very carefully about what you want to tell them." The transformation in Patricia was immediate and terrifying. The sweet mother disappeared, replaced by something feral and desperate. "You can't do this. You have no right. Jenny is my daughter. I know what's best for her. This will ruin everything I've worked for." The inadvertent honesty of that last statement revealed everything Dean needed to know about Patricia's true motivations. This wasn't about Jenny's welfare or happiness. It was about Patricia's investment in her daughter's career paying dividends. "What you've worked for," Dean repeated. "Not what Jenny's worked for. What you've worked for. That's the problem right there." Patricia realized she had revealed too much and scrambled to regain her maternal persona. "Of course I meant what we've worked for together. Jenny loves performing. She loves making people happy. You're going to destroy her dreams." Dean looked back at Jenny, who was still sitting in her chair, staring into space with the vacant expression of someone whose consciousness had been chemically suppressed. "Look at her, Patricia. Really look at her. Does that look like a child who's living her dreams, or does that look like a child who's living your dreams while her own dreams are being chemically suppressed?" The Child Protective Services investigators arrived exactly 57 minutes later. They were professionals who had seen every variety of child abuse and neglect, but even they were shocked by what they discovered. The pills Patricia had been giving Jenny were a powerful combination of amphetamines and sedatives, uppers to give her energy for performances, downers to keep her docile and compliant between scenes. A search of Patricia's purse revealed enough pills to supply a small pharmacy, along with detailed charts tracking Jenny's dosages and behavior patterns. The medical examination revealed that Jenny had been systematically drugged for over 2 years. Since the beginning of her television series, her natural sleep patterns had been destroyed. Her appetite was artificially suppressed. Her emotional responses had been chemically flattened. She was showing signs of early liver damage from the constant medication. At 12 years old, she was already exhibiting symptoms of long-term drug abuse. But the most damaging evidence wasn't physical, it was psychological. Child psychologists who interviewed Jenny discovered that she had virtually no sense of personal autonomy. She couldn't make simple decisions like what she wanted to eat or what games she wanted to play without looking to adults for approval. She had been trained to suppress her own desires so completely that she literally didn't know what she wanted anymore. Patricia Kellerman was arrested on charges of child abuse, child endangerment, and administering controlled substances to a minor. The investigation that followed revealed a network of stage parents, studio executives, and corrupt physicians who had been systematically drugging child performers across Hollywood for years. Patricia's arrest became the first domino in a scandal that eventually led to federal legislation protecting child actors and establishing mandatory supervision requirements for minors in the entertainment industry. But Dean's involvement in Jenny's rescue didn't end with Patricia's arrest. The child had nowhere to go. Her father was long gone. Her grandparents lived across the country, and she had no other family members willing or able to take custody. The state was preparing to place her in foster care when Dean made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He offered to become Jenny's legal guardian. "I can't sing," Dean told the family court judge during the custody hearing. "I can't dance. I can barely act. But I know how to be a father, and I know how to protect kids from adults who want to use them. Jenny needs someone who cares more about her welfare than her career, and I can be that person." The arrangement was unprecedented, a major Hollywood star becoming the guardian of another studio's child performer. But Dean's reputation for integrity, combined with character witnesses that included Frank Sinatra, John Wayne, and even representatives from the Catholic Church, convinced the court that this was in Jenny's best interests. The first few months were difficult. Jenny suffered withdrawal symptoms from the drugs her mother had been giving her. She had panic attacks when asked to make even simple decisions. She couldn't sleep through the night without medication. Dean hired the best child psychologists in Los Angeles and created an environment where Jenny could slowly rediscover who she was beneath the artificial personality her mother had constructed. Gradually, the real Jenny began to emerge. She was funny and curious and creative, but in ways that had nothing to do with performing. She loved drawing and reading and playing with Dean's dogs. She was interested in science and mathematics, subjects that Patricia had dismissed as irrelevant to an entertainment career. Most importantly, she began to express preferences about food, about clothes, about how she wanted to spend her time. Dean made the decision that Patricia would have considered unthinkable. He ended Jenny's entertainment career. He bought out her contract with the television network, foregoing millions of dollars in potential earnings to give her the chance to be a normal child. She enrolled in a regular school, made friends who didn't know she had been famous, and slowly learned to navigate the world without chemicals or constant adult supervision. The scandal surrounding Jenny's rescue from her mother became one of the defining moments in the history of child protection in Hollywood. But Dean never spoke publicly about his role in saving her. When reporters asked about his decision to become her guardian, he simply said, "Every kid deserves someone in their corner who isn't trying to make money off them." Jenny Kellerman grew up to become Dr. Jennifer Martin, a child psychologist who dedicated her career to helping other young victims of exploitation and abuse. She never returned to entertainment, but she often spoke about how Dean's intervention had literally saved her life. Patricia Kellerman served 3 years in prison and was permanently banned from involvement in the entertainment industry. She died alone in 1987, still convinced that she had been a loving mother who had been destroyed by a vengeful system that didn't understand her sacrifices. Dean Martin's rescue of Jenny Kellerman remains one of the most powerful examples of moral courage in Hollywood history. He had recognized evil disguised as love, abuse disguised as opportunity, and exploitation disguised as parental devotion, and he had acted on that recognition regardless of the personal and professional consequences. In an industry built on illusion, Dean Martin had chosen to see reality. In a business that profits from childhood, he had chosen to protect innocence. In a town where everyone was looking out for their own interests, he had looked out for a child who had no one else to protect her. The real tragedy wasn't that Patricia Kellerman had tried to destroy her daughter's life in pursuit of fame and fortune. The real tragedy was that she had succeeded for 2 years before anyone with the power to stop her had bothered to look closely enough to see what was really happening. Dean Martin had looked, and because he looked, Jenny Kellerman had lived to become the person she was meant to be, rather than the product her mother had tried to make her. Sometimes the most important performance a person can give is to stop performing and start being human. Dean Martin had given that gift to a 12-year-old girl whose own mother had forgotten that children are people, not products. It was the most important thing he ever did, and nobody made a movie about it.